Well, welcome and good morning to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. This is my twice weekly live webcast where we look at news, views, and tips on better biking. So who's looked in this morning? Clive's looked in, I think it was. Yes, Clive. Good morning to you, Clive. Nice to see you. What have we got for you in today's show? It's Wednesday, the 3rd of April, show number 417. It's a fairly dull day here in London at the moment. More on the weather in a few seconds. Today, the F1 promoter has bought the rights to MotoGP, or have they? We'll have a look at that story. That'll be the first one of the day, actually. Not often I focus on motorsport first, but that's the one I'll look at initially. The DFT are to commission research into headlight glare, long overdue in my opinion. The Asphalt Industry Alliance has warned that our roads are on the brink of collapse. Things have got even worse since their last report. Essex paid out £220,000 in pothole damage last year. Meanwhile, repairs to a Welsh green lane have angered walkers and conservationists. We'll have a look at the e-Rockit. It's a road legal 60-mile-per-hour pedal-assisted e-cycle, which frankly is a bit of a bonkers concept. And CFMoto appear to be working on an electric version of their recently released CF450RR. We'll have a look at that too. And then finally, in depth today, I'll be looking at a Fortnite video where Ryan says that body armour is useless, and I'll be asking if he's right, and I'll be giving you my opinion on whether he is or not. So stay tuned for that. We also have Kevin, Christine, and Nigel, and Sue all looked in. Good to see you all. Thank you very much indeed for making it live this morning. Right, so first things first though. On with the weather. Now, the bad news is that it's been pretty wet recently. It's been a wet morning here in London. It is drying up at the moment, but there is no obvious sign of the rain coming to an end, even though we are now into April. I should have a picture here somewhere. There it is, and I'll get that up on screen. So there you go, nice picture of a motorcycle or two in the rain. Today, forecast, it'll be breezy, early rain clearing from the south with some sunny spells later, but across the north it will be cloud and patchy rain. Tonight, watch out for snow showers if you're in the far north. In Scotland, there will be snow on hills. Showery rain, heavy at times, will be returning to the south. That rain will linger tomorrow in the east, and it will turn drier for a time in the south of England, but then more rain will be arriving from the southwest later. So Friday itself looks wet and windy, snow again in northern Scotland. The rain will clear to sunny spells in the southwest, but yet another pulse of heavy rain will spread across the UK overnight into Saturday, bringing with it very strong winds. This will be a storm by the sound of things. There is a hint that Sunday could at last be something of a dry and brighter day. So if you're planning a weekend ride, that's probably the day to look for. But as always, look at your local weather forecasts. Right, okay, so on with the news then. And as I said, the first item, it's not often that I lead with a piece on motorcycle sport, but on April the 1st, a day which I'm sure resonates, Liberty Media Corporation announced that they had reached an agreement to acquire MotoGP. Now, that's not the right picture, is it? That's the right picture. Now, under the deal, Liberty Media will acquire approximately 86% of Dorna Sports SL shares. Currently, they are the exclusive commercial and television rights holder for MotoGP. The Dorna management will retain approximately 14% of their equity. Now, Dorna, which as far as I can work out appears to be in debt to the tune of around £1 billion, will remain an independently run company under the Liberty Media umbrella. Carmelo Espelita, who's been the CEO since 1994, he will remain in his position and he'll continue to run the business with his management team, and the business remains based in Madrid. Now, the statement says that the acquisition is expected to be completed by the year end of this year. Greg Maffei, he's the Liberty Media President and CEO, says we're thrilled to expand our portfolio of leading live sports and entertainment assets with the acquisition of MotoGP. MotoGP is a global league with a loyal, enthusiastic fan base, captivating racing, and a highly cash flow generative financial profile. Carmelo and his management team have built a great sporting spectacle that we can expand to a wider global audience. The business has significant upside, and we intend to grow the sport of MotoGP fans, teams, commercial partners, and shareholders. Meanwhile, Carmelo Espelita, the CEO of Dorna, he says this is the perfect next step in the evolution of MotoGP, and we're excited for what this milestone brings to Dorna, the MotoGP paddock, and racing fans. We're proud of the global sport we've grown. This transaction is a testament to the value of the sport today and its growth potential. And they go on to say that Liberty have a credible track record for developing sports assets, and that MotoGP could not wish for a better partner. Now, it seems the initial plan was actually to announce this deal prior to the opening round of the MotoGP season, which began at the beginning of last month. But the possible intervention of the European Commission's body that regulates competition markets led to the American side putting the brakes on the agreement. Now, what we're looking at are the European Union's anti-monopoly policies, because they could potentially be a barrier to this deal. Now, a bit of history. Back in 2006, the private equity group CVC Capital Partners, they purchased the majority shares in the Formula One group, whilst still being the owner of the MotoGP promoter Dorna at the time. Now, in order to complete the F1 takeover, CVC actually elected to divest themselves of Dorna due to what was said to be serious doubts as to the simultaneous ownership of F1 and MotoGP, impeding effective competition, and thus to eliminate the risk of a negative ruling by the EU. And that negative risk was actually formally outlined in the eventual EU decision to grant CVC's F1 markets of operation between F1 and MotoGP. There was no meaningful overlap in the context of motorsport regulators, advertisers, and participating teams and manufacturers, and only a minor overlap when it came to the circuits that they raced on. But the regulatory body did find that there was a significant horizontal overlap in terms of TV rights markets, and it was argued at the time that owning both F1 and MotoGP would lead to a strengthening of CVC's bargaining position in terms of those TV rights, and thus potentially driving up the price of the coverage to the broadcasters. And they also asked if there was the possibility of bundling, in other words, selling the F1 and MotoGP rights together at a higher price to broadcasters, which would all ultimately lead, of course, to increased consumer prices and a reduction in choice. Now, back in 2006, the EU assessment was based on the impact on television coverage, which of course at the time was almost entirely free to air TV. Almost 2 decades on, MotoGP is now shown live only on pay-to-view, as is the full F1 coverage, and that's a big change. Liberty Media bought F1 from CVC in 2017. That was actually a deal that removed Bernie Ecclestone as chief executive of Formula One. As well as MotoGP, though, Dorna also hold the exclusive rights to a significant number of other motorcycle racing series, not just MotoGP, Moto2 and Moto3 as you'd expect, but also the FIM's new Moto E World Championship, the also brand new FIM Women's Circuit Racing World Championship, and Dorna also, of course, acquired the rights to the FIM Superbike World Championship in 2013. Meanwhile, the company also participates in the management and marketing of other championships, including the Spanish Road Racing Championship, that's CEV Championship, the British Superbike Championship, BSB, and the Trials World Championship, both indoor and outdoor. So that's effectively, a very, very significant, almost entirely the portfolio of top-level racing. Now, this is being reported as a done deal, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how the European regulators view this acquisition, whether it actually turns out to be an April Fool. So keep an eye on that if you're in the least bit interested in watching motorcycle racing or even Formula One as to what goes on there next. Right, okay, next story then. The DFT, Department for Transport, they've announced that they will commission independent research into better understanding the root causes of driver glare and to identify appropriate mitigations. Now, this is the response to a petition which gained over 10,000 signatures urging ministers to launch such a review. Now, the RAC suggests that whilst the use of LED bulbs in modern cars does improve a driver's view of the road, the intense beam can affect other road users, and I'd certainly be on the side of that particular statement. According to a recent survey conducted amongst 2,000 UK drivers by the RAC, 85% of them affected by headlight glare believe the problem is getting worse, and 89% consider certain car headlights to be excessively bright. And again, amongst those who experience headlight glare, 67% reported it significantly reduced their driving speed. 64% believe that they pose a risk of causing accidents. Now, the issue may be compounded by factors such as badly aligned headlights, of course, but also the increasing number of cars that sit higher on the road, such as SUVs. Now, it's true that from September 2027, new cars will be required to have automatic headlight levelling, and this is all based on international rules which have been agreed by the United Nations back in April last year. The DFT says that these new lights may lead to a reduction in the numbers of road users being dazzled, but the RAC, they welcomed these regulatory changes, but they also pointed out, of course, that it will take years for the existing pool of vehicles with non-self-leveling lights to pass out of use, so it won't address this dazzle from existing vehicles for many years to come. I'd also suggest, of course, that self-dazzling won't help, self-leveling rather, won't help with dazzle that happens when a car approaches you over a crest. It's one of the biggest problems I find, I must admit. How much of a problem is dazzle? Well, government figures show that since 2013 there have been an average of 280 collisions a year on British roads where dazzling headlights have been recorded as a contributory factor. 6 a year create a fatal collision. The RAC, though, say that there are significant shortcomings with the official road casualty data not actually capturing the true number of headlight glare incidents. And so their spokesperson said it's absolutely right the topic is investigated properly to understand what can be done to keep everyone safe. We look forward to working with the DFT to help ensure the study is as robust as possible and that drivers' voices are heard. Right, okay, so on to potholes and roads surfaces generally. The Industry Alliance, the Asphalt Industry Alliance, has reported that the state of roads in England and Wales has reached what they call a critical point. Now, according to the AIA Alarm survey, only 47% of local roads in the UK are now in good structural condition. Over 100,000 roads, more than half the local road network, they say have a structural life that is no more than 15 years. Basically, they're all falling apart, and they say the extreme weather conditions have made things worse, bringing everything to the point of near collapse. Now, local governments are currently required to fill in over 2 million potholes in the current financial year. Now, this does represent an increase in the numbers over the previous 12 months, actually 43% increase, so a significant number of new potholes to be filled in. It's said to be the largest amount since 2.2 million were repaired in England and Wales between 2015 and 2016. There is a problem, of course, with that. Is many of the potholes that are filled in are potholes that have previously been filled in. The local roads here, we have repairs over repairs over repairs. Some potholes have been replaced 3 or 4 times in the 10 years or so since I have lived in the area. And the cost of the backlog of repairs has now reached a record high, £16.3 billion. Now, local authorities have had a slightly increased grant this year, but it's been eaten up, of course, by rising inflation. According to Rick Green, who's the chair of the Asphalt Industry Alliance, he says there's much work to be done, and he says, quote, the Transport Secretary was quoted as saying that the additional 8.3 billion over 11 years is enough to resurface 5,000 miles of local roads. And he says that sounds like a lot, but when you consider there are already 34,000 miles identified as structurally poor with less than 5 years life remaining, you can see that that's actually not very much at all. He says we need to get to the point where local authority highway engineers can plan and proactively carry out repairs in the most timely and efficient way to the greatest benefit for all road users, rather than having just enough money to address immediate and urgent needs. Now, the RAC head of policy, Simon Williams, he said the findings of the report send the clearest signal yet to the government of the critical state of so many of the roads used by millions every day. By the government's own admissions, the 8.3 billion from the cancelled parts of HS2 is only sufficient to resurface around 5,000 miles of roads, which is just 3% of all council managed roads in England. He says the scale of the problem is gargantuan. And he says basically the government data showed road maintenance is declining at a time when the opposite is needed. And the status quo is not sustainable. And the longer government fails to grasp this reality, the bigger the eventual cost to the public purse. Okay, so that's the first pothole story. We have another one. We also have some comments. Paul's looked in. Morning, Paul. Yes, I might be able to guess the subject to those calls, Paul. Nick's looked in. Kevin says less respect for road safety messaging and associated enforcement when authorities then sit on safety partnerships subject to neglect to repair. Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying there, Kevin. Paul says investment in pothole repairs appears to follow a cycle, the same as the election cycle. Is that a coincidence? Probably not. Nigel says that I remember on one of the Biker Down courses way back when one of you mentioned how the new LED lights stood out. Qualified that by saying, of course, when everybody has bright LEDs, and seeing anything will be a whole new matter. Yes, indeed. Absolutely, Nigel. Right, okay, so yeah, all right, where was I then? So that's potholes. Now, I'll just give you a quick heads up to some offers which I've been running via my Coffee and Facebook pages. These are the Easter Madness offers on books. Good Friday offer was the Survival Skills ebook. That's the groundbreaking guide, I would say, to improving your riding. That actually offers genuine exercises for you to try out in the book to improve things, rather than just telling you what you should do. The book tells you how to do it. I have 20 copies of that available, which you can order directly. The links are all in the preamble to the show, by the way. The Saturday offer was 2 books in one, my 2 Mag Columns books, Mag Columns 1, End of the Road, Mag Columns 2, which cover more than a decade of my articles I've written for Street Biker and the Road. Again, those are order and download instantly. Easter Sunday's offer was a reduced price copy of The Science of Being Seen PDF. That gives you the background to The Science of Being Seen presentation, all in a short, easy to read book. And there's a Get There's the Accident Top 10 ebook, totally free along with that. That's Sundays off, and then Monday it was Tarmac Tactics again. It's a book which offers real life solutions to practical problems that we face on the road, and you get a mini group riding ebook free with that. So all offers are available for the rest of this week right through till midnight Sunday, so go and have a look at those. And if you want to order one, I'd be very grateful, because all your purchases help support all my activities. Right, okay, so moving on rapidly, we have some more news about surfacing. This is a rather odd story, because this is all about the restoration of a track. Excuse me. Believe it or not, it's hay fever time already. This is the restoration of a track originally created by 12th century monks, and the project has been branded as stupid, foolhardy, and a little short of breathtaking by trustees of the Cambrian Mountain Society. So what's the interest to motorcyclists? Well, it's the Monks Trod byway, and the project aims to make it accessible once again to off-road motorcyclists. Now, this historic trackway links two historically important monasteries in the Cambrian Mountains. Pardon my pronunciation. Abbey Cumhir in Powys, and Strata Florida, which is in Ceredigion. Now, legally, the route through the Cambrian Mountains is accessible not just to walkers, cyclists and horse riders, but also to road legal motor vehicles. But a traffic order banning 4x4s, that was instituted back in 1990, and temporary orders banning motorcycles have been put in place regularly since 2002. And they've often, as they've come and gone, as the surface has further been damaged, and I'm not saying it was by motorcyclists, the traffic orders have been reinstated. Now, the latest restriction was imposed in 2023, and it seems that the Cambrian Mountain Society thought this would lead to a permanent ban on bikes. So their decision by the local councils to spend £300,000 to resurface the trackway has upset environmentalists and conservationists who fear it could harm wildlife and peatlands. The society believes that the investment is a waste of cash, and that the resurfaced track will increase carbon emissions and air pollution and environmental degradation. And they also suspect, they say, that whilst law-abiding bikers might keep to the track, they will be a serious deterrent to other track users, and other riders will use it as a launching pad, they call it, for illegal off-road riding over the surrounding hills. Now, Powys Council, they've pointed out that it's wrong to claim that the trod will be paved. They say that the repairs will actually aim to create a drier causeway across the wettest areas with stone, which will create a more durable surface, and that will benefit not only recreational riders but also pedestrians and cyclists. The Trail Riders Fellowship, the TRF, they are a conservation group basically that works to keep these byways open to motorcyclists and other users. They said the majority of riders are responsible, and that these are the ones losing out from the ban. And they said that trail riding actually benefits local economies, and it's called for greater enforcement of existing laws to deter illegal riders. They also said that the upgrade would be to the benefit of all, and that, quote, walkers no more enjoy trudging through deep puddles than trail riders. And their spokesman continued, responsible trail riding is not the eco-disaster purported here by its opponents. TRF has a code of conduct that's based on responsible, sustainable use, and it recognises and observes the countryside code. The carbon footprint of a trail motorcycle is a fraction of that of a motorcar, and this is interesting. It's been calculated by eco-analysts to be less than that of the family dog. In the case of Monk's Trod, it's a matter of some muddy ruts and holes caused by illegal vehicle use and by land management vehicles which would not be affected by any ban. They're not by responsible trail riders. Now, I have to say, from my own very limited experience of riding green lanes in Kent on my mountain bike, and also my old Honda Dominator is anything to go by, I'd agree with the TRF on this one. By far the greatest damage that was done to those trails was actually down to tractors and also by horses, which actually really churn up a surface. Now, looking at bike sales, aside from Germany, all major European markets, they experienced an uptick in motorcycle registrations in 2023. Italy was up 18% on 2022, the best performance. And there's a long-term trend for motorcycle sales, which reflect a preference for commuting and leisure machines. However, the moped market sagged significantly. Belgium, France, Netherlands, Germany, Italy, Spain, all experiencing significantly lower sales, and they collapsed by over 40% in Netherlands and Germany, which actually mirrors the picture here in the UK. And also 2023 was a disappointing year for electric powered two-wheelers of all sizes. Just as it happened in the UK, sales dropped in Europe too. Possibly that's due to declining subsidies. So, right, okay, let's move on to have a look at a couple of motorcycles. Now, as I've said before, struggling to find stories about petrol engine bikes at the moment. Most of the news is actually about electric ones, so let's have a quick look at this one. This is the e-Rockit. Now, it's marketed as a human hybrid, a term the company's actually copyrighted. Now, what sets it apart from the traditional e-cycles and e-motorcycles is that whilst it is pedal operated, it also reaches a top speed of 62 miles per hour, 100 kph, thanks to a 5 kilowatt motor, which delivers a 16 kilowatts at peak, and that drives the rear wheel via a belt. Now, according to e-Rockit, their vehicle is approved for road use and therefore can be driven on all public roads, even on motorways. Now, I'm not sure I'd be that keen on using this thing on the M25, let alone a German autobahn. And that means it must be registered, insured and ridden with a motorcycle license. And that means it's not a bicycle, not even a pedelec of the electrically assisted bikes with limited top speed. It's not permitted to use dedicated cycle paths. Now, so what do the pedals do? Well, bizarrely, they don't have any connection to the rear wheel. They don't offer any drive. So what do? Well, totally pointlessly to my mind, they actually regulate the speed of the e-Rockit. They measure the rider's input, then multiply it by a factor of plus 50. So in short, the harder you pedal, the faster you go. Make up your own minds on that. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. But e-Rockit claim it provides quote, unprecedented intuitive interaction with the vehicle, resulting in maximum emotions, driving pleasure and innovative power whilst promoting sustainability. You get to travel up to 80 miles, 130 kph on the 7.5 kilowatt battery, but the problem I foresee is that even pedaling without a great deal of resistance is going to tire yourself out very quickly. So what actually happens when your legs run out of steam? Presumably the bike stops unless there's actually a backup throttle, in which case spinning the pedals over seems to me to be totally pointless. So I would say that the 80-mile range is probably far more than most riders are likely to be able to pedal the thing. If you do empty the battery, you can recharge it from 20 to 80% in 3 hours, double that if it's totally discharged, and that can be done via a standard 230-volt outlet. Here's the damage though. The bike will set you back no less than €12,900. And right now it's only available on pre-order too. So personally, I can think of other ways I'd be spending that amount of cash. Okay, so let's have a look at another potential electric bike. Now, as you probably know, Kawasaki have chosen to base their new electric motorcycles on a pre-existing internal combustion engine bike, and it appears that CFMoto are about to follow the same path. The patents have been seen online, suggests that CFMoto are working on an electric sport bike which appears to be based on this 2023 450 SR, known as the SS in the United States for some reasons, the bike in the picture there. Now the patent suggests that the batteries mounted vertically in the chassis. Presumably you take out the engine and the petrol tank and you drop it into the slot that's left. That's certainly been done on other bikes. And then it drives it through a mid-mounted motor, which is more or less where the gearbox on a conventional motorcycle would be, via a single speed belt drive transmission. Now it looks from close examination, according to experts, that the tubular chassis is the same, so is the subframe of this new electric bike, and there are two additional cradles which secure the battery pack underneath to carry the weight. The suspension, swing arm, wheels, brakes are all a match for the existing machine, as is the bodywork. So the implication, one article suggests, is that the bike could be manufactured on the same assembly line to help reduce production costs. Now, given that CFMoto's bikes are already pretty competitively priced, combining their low costs with the use of an existing machine as a base for an e-bike could mean that we do get to see electric motorcycles not too expensive. And that could pose problems for the likes of Zero and Energica, who build sort of bespoke machines. Will we actually see the bike? Well, CFMoto patents are typically followed by a production motorcycle, or at least a concept bike. The only thing I do hope is that the bike will have more performance than Kawasaki's first foray into the scene, which barely manages to match a 125 ICE bike in terms of get up and go. Okay, so we've got a couple of other comments here. Russell says, my wife moans about LED headlights constantly when night driving. Yeah, I can understand that. Nigel says, potholes, government facing, reality will never happen. And Aaron says about the e-Rockit, if I'm going that fast, I don't want to be physically fatigued. I know, I just think it's a bonkers concept, isn't it? Anyway, here we go. Final item for today then, it's the in-depth item at the end of the show. Now, this is all about the latest Fort9 video that appeared on Monday, April Fool's Day, in case you had forgotten, and it was entitled, Why I Stopped Wearing Motorcycle Body Armour. Now, I recommend you go and watch the video in question to get the full info on what Ryan's talking about. But essentially what he says is that when it comes to body armour, he'd never questioned its usefulness. But when he got to wondering whether a CE level 1 pad would be enough, or whether it should fit the what he called the clunkier level 2 items, you don't have to dig deep, he says, to see these things in a different colour. And the rest of the video that he talks about goes on to say that the CE standard EN1621 states that the CE1 pad has to take a realistic 50 kilojoule hit and transmits less than 18 kilojoules. Or that should be kilonewtons, I think that'll transcribe that incorrectly. The pad certificated to level 2 has to pass less than 9, so that's the standard. But then he asks, what's the braking strength of the strongest human bone in the body, and the answer is just 4 kilonewtons. So this takes me back to some calculations that I did personally almost 20, oops, that's the wrong one, that's the right button, almost 20 years ago. It was about the same time that the first chest pads were appearing, along with the usual, this piece of kit will save your life, claims from the manufacturers and the journos in the bike comics who were reviewing these products. Now, I looked at the standards and attempted to make some sense of just how much energy a chest protector could absorb. And after crunching some numbers, I got an answer that suggested it was about as much as being hit in the chest by a frozen chicken fired at you at 30 miles per hour. Now, the calculation was tricky, I'll admit this. The manufacturer data that I was looking at seemed to be designed to deliberately confuse the issue, because what it actually used was incompatible numbers in their specs. So I'm still not entirely convinced my results were spot on, but one thing was pretty clear. The energy absorption that a body protector can actually manage is way less than the human body will experience in even a low-speed collision, such as with a tree or a turning car. Now, the interesting point that Ryan makes on top of the first observation is that he says, quote, horse girls get body armour certified to the 4 kilonewton threshold. So why is our motorcycle stuff 2 to 4 times weaker? That's a good question. And he talks about the industry's tendency to achieve only minimum impact standards, though there are exceptions, as I previously previously reported. And he talks about how protectors also could be bigger to provide more coverage to larger people wearing them. Now I'll leave you to follow the rest of the video. It's on YouTube. I will put the link up to it, and he will also talk about how a variety of studies have looked at the real life performance of protectors in crashes where riders sustained injuries or no injuries, and what they actually concluded was that the body armour provides additional protection from abrasion rather than impact. Now, as I said 20 odd years ago when I was writing about this, about all that CE certified body armour is good for is falling from the height of the seat plus a bit for a high side to the ground, and then helping out with some abrasion resistance if we slide. Or one of the comments made on the Fortnite video, it's pretty useful when you're kneeling down next to the bike to fix it, and I would concur with that one. So it's your choice, of course, whether to use body armour or not, and there are certain brands which do significantly exceed the minimum standard. I wouldn't disagree with that, and Paul Varnsbury and Chris Hurren are both doing very valuable work in this field, but it is important to be realistic about what even the best body armour can achieve for us. And the real truth is that whilst there are minor spills where the impact protectors will save us from both bruises, the old broken bone, and cuts and abrasion injuries, a major crash will result in an injury that is so hard that no matter what protection the bones get, our internal organs will tear apart. And for instance, T-boning the side of a van at 30 miles per hour in town, hitting a tree on a rural road at the same kind of speed, is very likely to be quite fast enough to be a fatal crash. So the truth is that even with all the gear all the time, we're really not much better armoured against a heavy impact than a pedestrian. Now, as usual, comments are I'll welcome them, particularly if you've experienced a bike crash with or without body armour. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Right, okay, Paul has, as I expected, has come in. Viewers should also read the opinions in the comments. Bennett's Bike Social will be uploading video on the subject to its YouTube channel within the next hour or so. Thank you, Paul. That's interesting to know. Be interested to see what Bennett's have to say about that too. So yeah, by all means, you know, use body armour. As I say, it can't really do too much harm, at least the modern soft stuff doesn't, but you know, don't have unrealistic expectations about what it can achieve. And I really think that some riders do think that it is a suit of armour, and it isn't. Right, that is pretty much it from me for today. So don't forget, as usual, please make sure that if you have enjoyed the show, do tell your biking buddies about it. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and all the usual things that you do when you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. And if you are on YouTube too, don't forget there are my other videos in my playlists: 60-second safety, 60-second science. I haven't updated those a bit due to things that have been going on in my private life, but I will get back to those in not too distant future and get some new videos for you to watch. That is it for today. We do have a few comments that have come in since. Aaron says, I never really considered armour so much for impact resistance, but conclude it saved all the pointy bits from getting rounded off. Yes, I think that's not an unreasonable expectation. Nick says, Ryan does suggest that airbags are a good thing. Yeah, I still have my doubts about exactly how much an airbag can absorb too, and I think basically the same applies to the body armour. And there's also the fact that they're sold for spine and neck protection. I think neck protection, from what I've read, seems to be reasonably good. Certainly they wouldn't have protected me from my compression injury when I landed on my backside at 70 miles per hour. Sue says, fascinating show, and yes, birch are highly allergenic at this time of year. Yes, that's funny enough, I discovered that just recently. Aspen in March and then birch in April. Thank you. And Nick says, depending on where you wear it. And Nigel says, coffee on its way. Thank you very much indeed, Nigel. Always very much appreciated. And I'll give you a shout out in the next show. Right, okay, so there we are. That's it for today. That's all the comments. Thank you indeed. We'll see you hopefully on the next show, which will be, of course, on Sunday. And I very much hope you've enjoyed today's show. There seems to be some positive feedback, which is always good to hear. So look out for the next show. Meanwhile, if you are out there on the bike today or over the coming days, keep an eye on the weather and do stay shiny side up.